Okay, you guys, I have been talking a little bit about all of the amazing things that Dr. Mary does. And now I just want to welcome you on to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I am so excited. We have talked before. I've been on hers, and now I get the immense pleasure and to have her on our show. And I'm so glad to share you with all of our listeners that are listening today. And so I would love to dive in because I find it fascinating that you have 8 sons. And I do, not to mention that that's just one part of your story. But what comes with having 8 sons is all of that personal development that comes in. And not only the personal development for you, but also you helping them have all of that personal development. And so it isn't just the crazy physical and emotional demands of just being a mother to that many children. It really is what gets me, and what's fascinating is the development that happens throughout all of those years. And just this morning I was going through some old journals of mine and things like that, and just watching the growth of myself through the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years. And I do find it fascinating. So before we go on, tell us a bit about your story. How did you get to where you are and what you're doing today? And tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. So I totally agree with you that so often we focus on child development, but we focus a little bit less on mother development and parent development. And we really go through a transition with our experience as well. And I, from the time I was just a little girl, I wanted to be what I told my mom was a baby doctor. And that really percolated in me through the time that I was growing up. And, as I got to be in high school, I thought, is this really what I want? Or is this just some childhood dream that it has attached to me, but I don't really have to follow it, that it's just like an idea from when I was 5? But I really felt like this is what my work is. And I also, though, really valued and value family and motherhood. So I didn't know how it was all going to add up. But as it turned out, I did, get into medical school, and during the end of the second year of medical school, I was pregnant with my first child. And that began a whole new journey of balance and trying to live in alignment with my own family while still trying to accomplish this dream of being a doctor. And I remember by the time I graduated from residency, I was just about to have my fourth baby. And I kind of had this existential crisis because I thought, oh my goodness, now I have more jurisdiction over my time, and I get to be home with these kids all the time because I had chosen to work part-time. And what am I doing as a mother? Like, what is it to be a mother? What, all these questions that I was revisiting. And it started me on a journey of writing a book, and then this book became a parenting program called Compassion Parenting. And in my training as a pediatrician, I found that I didn't always resonate with the traditional pathways that were taught. And so I got additional training in mind-body medicine and really found some strength-based and resilience-based ways of addressing things like ADHD and anxiety. And so that became its own journey. But here I am now. I have 8 sons. The youngest is 6 and the oldest is 22. So
That is amazing. And I have my 4 daughters that are 12 to 16 right now. And to think of a spread, I mean, I there is not a huge difference between 40 and 44, or even frankly 24 and 28, but between 12 and 16 there's a huge difference, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I'm thinking about you and the difference that you are having between 6 and 22. And yeah, that must be very interesting to parent and go through each one of those developmental stages again and again. So I have to ask, just as a mom, so have you found that, and I don't know how the answer would be no, but I'm interested in how you have you found that going through this cycle, every couple of years for like 16 years or so, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that this cycle, you're like, oh, I remember this with this one, and they're all different. And I totally understand that they're all different, but we refine along the way. And have you noticed that? How has that journey been for you, when that refining process for each stage?
Mhm. Mhm. Definitely, there is a process of gathered wisdom
Uh-huh.
that can be translated. However, like you said, every child is new. And in a recent TEDx talk I gave, I alluded to the fact that in the high performance space, they talk about you become a master of something when you've spent 10,000 plus hours at it. And when you think about the hours that we spend in parenting,
Mm,
by the time our child is 2, we've spent 10,000 hours of active parenting. And but the target is always changing. And so it's
yes.
hard to feel a master of it, but we really do gain and collect and distill the wisdom from the different stages. And if we can be flexible and kind of look at each child and each stage with newness and freshness and humility, then we really can pivot and change and adjust and apply all the wisdom we have, but yet with a sort of um, ease and flexibility that is required when everything's changing every day.
That is so true. And, I think about people that, just have the one or two, which is totally great. Everyone's story is so different. But my point is, I remember when my kids were little and I would feel like, oh, okay, I feel like I've mastered this like sippy cup phase. I've mastered the what to do with the backpack when they come home from elementary school with 9,000 things in it phase. And then it's gone. It's like, oh, I have to master something else now. Yeah. But you're right. That target is constantly changing. And with that, I feel like that's a perfect segue into talking about parenting burnout. And so, have you ever experienced? I know I definitely have experienced parenting burnout a time or two, and I experienced it in every stage, when they're little, when they're toddlers, when they are, elementary, middle, high school, having these parenting burnout type of times. And then what do you feel like when you are experiencing this, and what have you seen people, when you talk to people and work with people that are experiencing parenting burnout, like how does it actually manifest itself?
Mhm. Well, to answer your questions, I have definitely been there and back again multiple times. And I think it's something that we have to really have compassion for ourselves about, that we often are just serving and going, and it seems sort of endless. And there will be times when we have less energy than others, and when we sort of lose sight of our vision and just have to pause a minute and recollect. And for me, that has sometimes felt like I just want to lay down. Like I just can hardly, there was so many things to think about. I just want to be flat. So, and sometimes it comes with discouragement. It can feel like exhaustion. It can feel like you're kind of in a disembodied state, just
Mhm.
robotically moving forward, but not really able to enjoy the process. And so that's something that I work a lot with the moms in my group about, because I think it really is something that it's important to know how to pull ourselves out of.
Right.
because we can't parent as well when we're in that depleted state. And if we can learn how to fall into it less, then it's just more enjoyable to parent and we can be more effective as parents. So a couple things that in my work surrounding the idea of parenting burnout, I like to delineate the idea of compassion versus empathy. Because I think one thing that can be so draining is to get caught in the drama, to get sucked into feeling all the feelings and the emotions and kind of being pulled down in the storm, instead of having that steadying role with our children where we are standing alongside them and feeling with them, but we're not necessarily in the feeling. So that's how I separate the idea of compassion, which is feeling with or even suffering with, versus empathy, which is, you know, being in the feeling, being in suffering. So
Yeah.
we don't need to exist in suffering. So sometimes they talk about compassion fatigue, but one of the big experts on self-compassion, Kristen Neff, she says, you know, it probably is more accurate to call that empathy fatigue rather than compassion fatigue. Um, and part of that is just delineating what our role is. So I know that you have a background in biology, and one thing that I thought was fascinating, I learned about this species, like of the common octopus, that the mother octopus often will stay in the water around her babies to the point of starving herself and even almost dissolving into the water, like dying and decomposing, and then, feeding them in some way, which seemed so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we, I think, don't have to be like octopus moms. We don't have to dissolve in the water around our children thinking that somehow they are, that we have to dissolve away for them to flourish, but instead we have to model what healthy adulthood looks like, what it looks like to be a person of passion, a person of well-being. And to contrast this, I live in southern Utah now, and lizard moms, I learned, they just, they lay their eggs and they run away, and they never see their babies. And of course, we don't want to be lizard moms, but I think there's a balance between the lizard mom and the octopus mom. And
I love the animal references.
finding where that fits in, how we can retain a sense of ourselves without dissolving into nothing, but we can still be present and there to enjoy and support and stand with.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. And I get such a visual thinking about that octopus mom just dissolving in the water around her as she's watching with that deep, concern and want to just help her baby survive, and not to anthropomorphize it, or anything like that. But, that is how we see it. It's their instinct, and it's basic, and it's not what she's doing, but we can take that example as humans and definitely see how we can relate to that type of behavior. And, when we were talking about parenting burnout, I think number one, like you said, we have to have compassion for ourselves in there. It has to be okay to say, I am getting burnt out. And there's levels of that within there too, right? And I was just listening to a great researcher the other day talking about when you need a little break, right? You're a little overwhelmed and you're just like, just give me a second. I just need to unravel the knot in my head, basically. Right. And that could be a 5-minute walk. That could be just laying on your bed for, a little bit or what have you. And then there's the more extreme level where it is like, I am so overwhelmed. I don't even know what side is up. And I grew up watching Seventh Heaven and back in the day, and I don't remember much of it except for their family dinners fascinated me. I loved their family dinners. I loved that they had community in their home all the time. We have adopted that in our own family. Like Tuesday nights have become community night, taco nights at our house, and people just come, people that were mentoring and that were doing this, and it's this wonderful time. Can be exhausting sometimes, but it's so good and it fulfills us in ways that we just didn't have before. But one time in Seventh Heaven, the mom, who I don't even remember her name, but for some reason, this always really reached out to me, even when I was in middle school watching this show, was that she was so overwhelmed when her kids, and I think she had 7 or 8 kids, 6, 7, I don't know, somewhere in there. And she was so overwhelmed with different things happening when the kids were in middle school and high school that she left and took like a mom only vacation. She was alone at a beach for like 4 days, just walking up and down, reading, watching the fire, like no TV or anything, just decompressing. And I find it so funny that even though I watched that show when I was in middle school, that I was like, why do I remember that, But I think it is important for moms to know that, and dads too. It just depends on who's having the overwhelm, right? At the time, it's okay to, first of all, admit it, and it's okay to face it, and it's okay to do something about it. And the more you know yourself, the more you will be able to rescue yourself even earlier. So for me, I'm a very audible person. So listening to very calming music and like a dark place, that really helps me. My husband, that drives him crazy. And so it's just funny. Have you ever been to, like, funny side story, have you ever been to one of those isolation pods at all, where it's like this orb and you go inside and it's a float chamber? Have you?
No, but I have been invited to go try one out in our
Yes.
community, so I haven't yet.
Okay, well, I encourage you to, and I want you to tell me if, when you do, like, how you like it, because we went on a couples night, my husband and I loved it. And I was like, I'm just floating. I feel like I'm in space. It's dark. We got the music and I'm like totally weightless. My husband came out of there and he was like, I think I just spent 20 minutes in hell. That was awful. And
Yeah,
so,
we're all individual.
yes. So knowing yourself is right there. And yeah, that just cracked me up. We still laugh about that. That was pre-COVID. So over a couple of years ago. Okay. So, in working with this, so giving ourselves permission, not being the octopus mom, not being the lizard mom either. We need to find the balance in there. So speaking of balance, we as parents, many of us have jobs outside the home, or we have dreams or passions or hobbies outside of just being the octopus mom, just being, just being the overseeing. What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? Right. And so where is, I know you've done some work in work-life balance and things like that, but can you give us some pointers and things to look out for? And I've heard even before, work-life balance is a total fallacy. I don't know if it's a fallacy, but I would love to know your take on this and some conversation there.
Yes, well, while we're talking about it, I would love to have you put in the show notes a link to a workshop I did about balance, and so I'll give you those links so you can do that. But in some ways, the idea of this continual balance, I think, is a fallacy. I think things always come in waves, and it's more of an organic way to look at it, and it's more how life goes in an organic flow and cycle type way. It's more of a feminine way of relating, but I think that it's not either we're like totally balanced or we're out of balance. It's like this dance sort of. And one thing that for myself and that I try to talk with other moms about is, like you said, that self-awareness. And so I have this little tool that I share, and it's this assessing stress action plan. So it's like ASAP. That's the acronym for it. And it's just acknowledging that we are in different places at different times. So maybe like, and I kind of modeled it after the asthma action plan, where you get in the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. That when you're in the green zone, everything feels good, it feels easy, it feels flowing. And but when you start having things feel tense and frustrating and overwhelming, that's a time to just step back a little bit. You're getting in the yellow zone and you need to do some type of intervention. And then there's that red zone where it feels like an emotional emergency. And sometimes you just have to stop. And my heart really goes out to moms and dads who are single parents and they don't necessarily feel like they can take that 4-day vacation on the beach, or
Right. Yeah.
and I think part of it is the story we tell ourselves, because sometimes we think we can't, but we really could. But sometimes we have to find that oasis within ourselves, and we have to recognize that our own experience we can find sanctuary within ourselves, even just for a minute, while everything is crazy around us. And definitely as a mom of 8 boys, I have been standing in the eye of the storm, finding that little piece of sanctuary. And one thing that I remember, so several years ago, I just had finished my pediatric residency. I had, I think, 6 kids at the time. I was taking care of my aging mother. I was working as a pediatrician, but just part-time, but still, like, everything I did was about caregiving. Everything I did was taking care of other people. And I one day went into this Aveda beauty school in Minneapolis, and I thought, okay, I can get this cheap haircut. And,
Yeah.
but it'll be kind of fun, and I'll be able to feel a little bit pampered. And I remember the girl who was going to cut my hair, she said, we offer a ritual of renewal before you get your hair cut. What ritual do you choose? Do you want, a little scalp massage? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want, a mini facial? And I almost started to cry to just have somebody offer this to me, like a ritual of renewal. So I really latched onto that idea. And I think that at the same time, sometimes the idea of self-care can feel like another chore, another task. And personally for me, like, I usually, like, I needed my haircut. Like, it had been like 6 months since I had gotten my haircut, maybe a year, I don't know. But I'm not somebody who loves, like, going to get my nails done or going to the spa. I want to be with my kids and connect. And so, and sometimes I do want to step away too, but I have found that the idea of doing spontaneous micro rituals of renewal are the things that help me the most. And to explain what I mean by that, it would be like when you're taking a shower, because you need to take a shower anyway, to actually feel the water on you, to smell the soap, to be present just for that minute and let it be enjoyable. Because so often we exist in a disembodied state, and that's not the way to absorb the joys of motherhood. And it's just like, and it's very much a recipe for burnout, because we're not able to receive the goodness, like being able to really look at our kids and really taste our food and feel our shower, and we're not getting any of that positive input because we're kind of just like on autopilot. And so that stuff is blocked out, but we're just doing, performing, and of course we will get burned out in that state. We need to receive. And so I would advocate finding spontaneous micro rituals of renewal in the things that you're already doing. I think that another thing that I feel really passionate about is connecting with things that you love. And it can just be for a few minutes, but something that I really love is singing. And so at different times in my life, it looked differently. And sometimes it meant that I would sit with my baby on my lap, and he was plunking the keys on the piano while I was trying to play something else and sing. But it was just this beautiful thing, and my kids weren't in the way of that. Like, I just was able to bring them into that experience. And and sometimes we have the story in our head that because of them we can't do
Mhm.
this or that, but often there is a way. We can either use, the edge time, when, those little moments that we capture before the kids wake up, after they go to bed, while we're waiting for them before they, you know jump in the car when we're picking them up. There are those little moments to capture. And then there's the time that we can just invite them in, like I was able to do with the music. And then there are the times when we have to have protected time, when, like, I couldn't bring all my kids to be like, okay, kids, follow me. I'm going to go do my rounds at the hospital. Just, just be quiet and just tag along. There were times that I had to have protected time. And so sometimes we really have to be proactively arranging that. Um, but I think that it is so important to remember the things we love and connect with them. And I think that is one sign of burnout, when we can't even find joy in those things, or we can't even remember those things.
Mm.
I remember I was driving in Minneapolis one day, and I was by myself in the car, but I saw these tractors on the side of the road, and I was like, inside, I just like lit up, and I was like, ooh, tractors. And then I thought, what was that? Like, I don't like tractors. I don't even have anyone in the car to say, look at the tractors. But it was like I had so much adopted the perspective and the worldview of, like, my toddler and school age boys, that suddenly tractors were attractive to me, and um but I think that part of ourselves, like, is lost when we're not remembering what we love. And I love this quote that I found at one point, and it said, if you feel like you've lost yourself in motherhood, remember that moms are always the best at finding lost things. And
Mm.
and I love that, because it's kind of true. When my kids are like, shoot,
Yeah.
where are my running shoes? And I'm like, I think I saw them, on the side of the trampoline. They run down and get them. But we also can do that for ourselves. We can remember what we love and who we are, and hold on to that all the time through our motherhood journey. And it doesn't have to be completely set aside. And and we it doesn't serve us well to completely set it aside, because we want our kids to observe us loving things and being passionate about things.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there was so much there. I literally have a page of notes here, but, so I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is the work that I do, is helping prepare your children for adulthood. And you have to be able to be the mirror that they see, right? Because whatever you're doing, they're doing. I was just writing about time, this morning before we got on. And, so many of our teenagers today are running around, and they are living a life that is like outside of their body, right? And they're like, I got to go to work, I got to go to school, I got to go to this extracurricular, and then I have to go to practice, and then I have to do this. And then they collapse in their bed and stay on their phones, right, for way too long at night, because they're finally connecting with something, instead of being just doing in their doing state. They feel like, anyway, they're connecting. Sometimes they are, many times it's a false connection, and that's a whole other story. But my point being is, the best way to teach your kid how to manage their time and to actually be in the moment, right, is to manage your time and be in the moment yourself. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you said, things earlier about, some of this, um, that sometimes you can feel like this, self-help or what have you is a burden, and that feels like another chore. And just a few weeks ago, I had a massage appointment, and I try to get massages every month. And I do have, it's functional too. I was in a car accident in 2014, and I have to keep up some of these for just therapeutic reasons. But anyway, it was time for a massage. I was stressed. There were so many things I needed to do. And I was like, I don't have time to go to a massage. And my husband's like, you need need a massage. Go to the massage. I was like, oh no, I don't have time. So it just reminded me of that. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea of the spontaneous micro renewals. And I'm with you. If someone, especially at that state when, all the kids are running around and it was crazy, or even in some of the states I am in now, sometimes if someone would have been like, what kind of renewal can I give you? I would have been like, oh, thank you. Can I hug you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been so amazing to go through all of this today. And I know all of our listeners got as much as I did out of today and maybe even more. So first of all, where can everyone find you and be able to listen and learn more about you?
So I will share 3 links. One is, this workshop for balance, this elusive thing that we find in moments and waves. And then also, I have an ebook called Parenting with Flow, because I feel like the idea of flow is the antithesis of burnout, because burnout seems stuck and withered. And so I will also provide a link to that free ebook. And then finally, I would love for you to share my TEDx talk. And in that talk, I address what I consider to be the one thing that I am striving for as a mother, because much of burnout comes from chasing too many things. And the one thing that I think is the foundation of really healthy motherhood is the idea of grounded, loving presence. And so that is what I'm striving for, is to be in a state to nurture my children. And so my job is to try to maintain that state, and we won't always maintain it, but if we can put our energy into that, because that's connected with our well-being instead of all this chasing, I think that we will do ourselves well. So there are connections to these things. It's probably easier just to have you put the show notes in, but I will say that one of my main websites is drmarywilde.com, drmarywilde.com, and you can connect with me there, and then we'll have the specific links in the show notes. Sound good?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. I can't wait to take a look at those. And when you're talking about the waves, I can't help but think just of my time working in the marine mammal world. And when you're out there, I mean, anyone that's listening who's ever been to the ocean, think about how many times you've been out there and it's a glass smooth surface, right? It does happen, and it is sometimes, but it is definitely not the majority of the time. There is always the waves that are happening, the peaks and the valleys, the peaks and the valleys and the peaks and the valleys. Sometimes they're really big, sometimes they're medium, sometimes they're small, and every once in a while you go out there and there is a perfectly smooth surface, but it's rare. So when we can accept that, and it makes things a lot easier. So
beautiful.
Just picturing going out there. We did go out in the open ocean one day when I was in Australia for a period of time. We went out one day, and I mean, we were out miles and miles, and it was a glass surface. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was truly amazing out there. I was like, I didn't know this could happen, like in an ocean, but it did. Northern Pacific. So, Northern South Pacific, I guess. But anyway, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you for having me, Nellie.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, I am so excited that we could have this talk today, because parenting burnout and balance are a part of our lives. And we have the 6,570 days in order to try, experiment, fail, rise, and keep getting better. And I love something Dr. Wilde said was gathered wisdom. I love that term, gathered wisdom. And that's what we can keep doing. We do that through our everyday. We do that through listening to things like this, through meeting new people and trying new things. So, all right, you guys, next week we will be back with another episode. And remember, just keep teaching, keep laughing, keep loving. And above all, remember to keep showing up with the intention in the 6,570 days of this parenthood, childhood experience, because they need you. All right, everyone, I will see you later.